And we are live.
Hey, folks.
Welcome to episode 50. Can you believe it's been
Oh my
50
God.
fucking episodes? Right. Also, hello, Jason, and hello, Emily. It's nice to see you both. We got a couple other people in. Feel free to say hi. Welcome, everyone. It has been a hell of a ride.
It has been. Feels weird to think we started this, 3 years ago?
What year is it now? It's 2024. Yes, because I was living in Dearborn, which means it was 2021, I think.
Hi, Corinne.
Hey, Corinne. Jason says Corinne says hello as well. And Snow says, damn, I missed the and we are live. I had to refresh the page. Snow pointed out in our Discord a thing that I had not realized until they pointed it out, that I say and we are live every single episode. Which I'm not mad about. It's kind of neat to have that.
I kind of like the idea of making T-shirts that have that on it.
Yeah, I do too. We should get a Redbubble at some point, but
we should. We could put Rune Daddy on one of the shirts. That too. We can also do Rune Jesus.
Again, it's a joke I will never let die. It's not even from this show. It's from AGF.
No, and I appreciate it.
Yeah. And no, I'm sure the queue helps Sarenth, says Emily.
Oh, yeah, it does. It definitely does. Hail, holy ones. That is 4 Roses small batch, because you turned me on to it and I went, I got to do it.
Oh, nice. Yeah, no, it's good stuff. I like it. All right.
And then the other thing I'm offering is Punchki Day vodka.
I've heard that's terrible.
It smells very sweet. I'm not sure how I feel about
it. So Jason asks, what are the drinks for today? I am drinking the very end of one of, if my camera will focus, one of Parents' birthday gifts to me, which is Schramm's Raspberry. I'm killing off that bottle tonight.
Nice.
There's a decent amount of it left. I'm going to have to drink a lot of water after this. What are you drinking?
It's Schramm's. So the aforementioned 4 Roses, I'm actually going to be pouring myself a little bit of that. And I may regret this, but I'm going to be doing Punchki Day vodka as well.
Tell me how it is, because I'm very curious.
This is from the Detroit distillery, so I like these guys, so we shall see.
Yeah, no, I saw it in the store and almost picked it up, and my partner was like, that is terrible. Do not buy that. And I was like, all right, I will trust you. And then we moved on.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, just feed Sarenth that it'll be okay. I've also got 4 Roses small batch. I've also got some Kraken down here. And oh yes, I have some Ribe Mead still.
Oh, nice.
Which is honey apple wine with hops and Miraca Gale. Yeah, Miraca Gale.
Good for me to jump into the prayer?
Please go for it. Cool. I'm going to mute. Go for it.
Yep. Hail to the holy ones who hold us when we weep. Hail to the holy ones who guide us when we are blind, who tell us when we are wrong and comfort us when we screw up, who teach us as the children that we are. Hail to you, holy ones who guard our ways. For we are children stumbling in the dark, and we need your light to see by. Thank you for your presence in our lives and the work that you do for us. You would not be wrong to leave us behind, and we are often ungrateful of your love. And it is all the greater that you do it anyway. And we are all the more grateful. Thank you. Backwarm you and keep you. Backwarm us and keep us all. All right.
All right. So to start off the evening right, I'm going to try this Punchki vodka, and we're going to see what this is like.
Speaking of making mistakes,
Right.
It could be good. I don't know.
It's okay. Honest to God, it tastes like a raspberry Punchki.
Really? Okay. Interesting.
So it's a little harsh on the front, but when you actually drink it and let it sit for a second, it tastes like a strawberry fucking Punchki. It's really wild.
Neat.
Don't get me wrong, this is not like something I would pick up for like regular drinking vodka, but for a novelty once a year, I could do this.
Not bad.
I'm going to try it, splicing it with a little bit of Dr. Zevia and see what that does for me.
Also, Jason says, is it that sweet?
Is it that? It's not cloyingly, which is what I was expecting.
Okay.
No. So on the front end, it's just you get the burn of the vodka, and on the back end, you get all the flavor.
Okay.
And the flavor is raspberry Punchki. It literally tastes like you're drinking a raspberry Punchki.
All right. I might see about grabbing a bottle then. Just
I've got an extra bottle.
Oh, I might grab it from you then. We'll see.
It's not okay. It's not bad. And with the Dr. Pepper or the Dr. Zevia, it takes some of that edge off.
Mm-hmm.
So if you splice it with something, it actually makes a really good mixer.
Okay. That I can see. That I can definitely see. A lot of those flavored vodkas end up being solid mixers, if not good on their own.
Mm-hmm. And, I've had some really god-awful vodkas, and this is not anywhere near god-awful. It's just mid.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, it's the Detroit distillery, so,
Yeah,
Detroit,
they do
they know their
stuff.
shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it is, if you don't like sweet vodka, you're not going to like it at all.
Yeah.
Because it is sweet, but it's mostly on the back end.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, I was honestly expecting trash. Because
Yeah.
I didn't know this was from the Michigan, the Detroit City Distillery.
Yeah.
But this isn't bad. This is not bad.
Okay.
Which is good because I already offered some of this.
What was I going to say? I don't remember. Anyway, so to celebrate our 50th episode, we decided we'd pick a really good, fun, happy topic.
By which, of course, we mean fucking depressing.
Yeah, no, 100%. So I suggested the topic actually over a month ago at this point, before I realized it was our 50th episode. And I literally just said, topic for next time: difficulties, challenges, etc. When shit goes sideways, sock puppets, self-doubt, when we fuck up, when we don't fuck up and things still go bad. How to live honestly and authentically with and through that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a Picard quote I'm looking up really quick.
Yeah, do your thing.
Here it is. It is possible to commit no mistakes and still lose. That is not a weakness. That is life.
Yeah. No, and I mean, that's a thing, right? Like, even if you do it right 100% of the time, shit will go sideways on you. That's not everything is within your control.
Yeah. Sometimes shit just happens. And sometimes it's, the thing that people like to do is they like to get into some kind of sense of control by saying to themselves, well, I could have done something different, when really there's nothing you could have done.
Yeah.
Sometimes shit just rolls downhill.
Yeah.
And there's no one to blame. It's just how the cookie is crumbled for today.
Yeah. And now that I'm working even more directly in healthcare, because I've always been like healthcare adjacent, but now that I'm working in a hospital laboratory, that's even more wild. Like you always know, right? You always know that things are things go sideways and all of that, but like it's in my face every day that shit happens and you can't control it. Healthy people get cancer and
healthy people get diabetes. That's
get diabetes.
As a diabetic, that drives me fucking crazy. Just
right?
sorry, random aside.
No, like it's right though. Like healthy people get diabetes. You know, and it's easy to get jaded. But I try to, whenever I can, remind my fellow healthcare workers, like, hey, yeah, no, that person has diabetes. It could be type 1 or type 2. We have no fucking idea from these lab tests. And they could have gotten type 1 diabetes out of the blue for no reason.
Right.
It just happens.
Because genetics is a bitch like that.
Yep.
Look at Sarenth and Maleck, things just faded. To a certain degree, I do actually believe this. Sometimes shit just happens. Things are faded. The dice has rolled a certain way. You know.
Yeah.
Could it have rolled the other way? Yes, but that's not what happened.
Yeah. For a certain definition of faded, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think to a certain degree, we don't know something is faded until we can look at it in the rear view.
Yeah.
And I think that approaching life as everything is faded and nothing is left to chance kind of takes the point of choice out of it to a certain degree, unless you believe that you're just part of fate enacting itself, which is a very fatalistic way to look at, but I can also get it.
Yeah, I can dig that. It's not how I see it, but I can dig it.
No, I can dig it, but I think that there's more choice inherent in the system than what we give ourselves credit for. But there's also a lot less fucking choice. It's kind of the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Yeah. Earther Orlog happens, y'all. Sarenth probably. Which to translate is
the folks, yes.
yeah. To translate that for the people who don't know what the fuck those words mean, Earther and Orlog are roughly fate and things that have passed, the future and the future and the past. Very roughly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Earther is that which was, and Orlog is, it literally translates to old law, that which has been set down before.
Yeah.
Very important concepts to heathenry, and interesting when you start looking at things from a philosophical lens, especially when you look at your past fuck-ups. Because when you're looking in the rearview mirror and everything is sunny and roses and everything, it's really easy to go either, depending on what your self-talk looks like, either I did an amazing job or look how I succeeded in spite of myself.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a very good point, Jason.
Yeah.
Fate versus free will is a really fun topic as a fate and chance worker.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's the other thing too, is everybody fucks up.
Oh God.
Everyone makes bad choices. And we're not talking about I should say. I'm not talking about oh yeah, shit went wrong. Nothing no, like you make mistakes. You do things that are dumb. Everyone does.
Like I'm trying something a little new tonight, just as a random aside.
Mm-hmm.
So I was told that if you want to take some of the burn and still get all the flavor, you put just a dab of water in your bourbon or your whiskey.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to try that tonight, just as a random aside.
Yeah, it likely won't get rid of all the burn, and it will change the flavor. Depends on the whiskey and on the palate. But yeah, a drop or two of water will often, especially with high proof whiskeys, which I believe 4 Roses Small Batch is.
Yeah, it's 45%.
Yeah, so it's not hugely high, but it's higher than standard. So it should help open it up a little bit and expose some more of the flavors. Which is a lot.
The smell profile is much more robust now.
Yeah, and it's a lot to do with complex biochemistry and the way that water interacts with a lot of those.
Fun.
Yeah, it's a whole thing that I, one, don't understand that well, and two, is genuinely kind of complicated because biochem mechanics are fun.
Task failed successfully is always fun. Yeah. Pyrrhic victories are a bitch.
Yeah.
It's fun as an armchair lay philosopher and a diviner and astrologer into whatever. It is actually as a topic. It's really, I really dig it.
Yeah.
I do think fate has a strong influence in our lives at different points, though free will and shifting your fate are there too. That's from Emily. And you should maybe have your Glencairn for that too. Ooh, yeah. Fuck, I forgot to bring my Glencairn down.
Speaking of fuck ups, release the hydrocarbons and polyphenolic compounds as we click at the same time.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. So Jason says, yeah, release the hydrocarbons and the polyphenolic compounds. Yeah.
Woo. Woof, that Four Roses has some kick to it.
A little bit.
Good shit, though.
Yeah. And,
so, sorry, go ahead.
Off of Snow's point, it's one of those things, when we're dealing with spirituality, it can be extremely forgiving. And it can also be extremely not. Like Snow's point about being a diviner. What happens if you read it wrong?
Oh, man.
When you're hearing.
I think for me as a professional diviner, the question is less, what if you fuck up the reading versus what if you give your client all of the relevant information and they still choose to go away from the table and completely ignore your advice or completely ignore what the gods have literally told them through the reading.
Yeah.
Because at that point, my hands are off, but they're fully invested.
Yeah. See, and for me, it's the opposite. It's the neat. They're going to do what they're going to do.
Right.
I don't have any control over that.
No, that's basically what I said.
Yeah. But like the responsibility on me of, well, this is in front of me. Am I sure I'm reading this right?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So that, I don't know. I think some of that just comes down to experience.
Oh, for sure.
But like, Emily makes a really, really good point that I wanted to bring into this. Yep.
Even reading it correctly can influence the client's decision. They might take the right result as done and dusted and not take the steps needed.
Right. That's a very good point. Have I had times where I fucked up a reading? Yeah. It's been a very long time, and I do not mean to sound egotistical with that. It's just experience.
Mm-hmm.
I think, at least for me, the times where I've really fucked up is when I'm so overly emotional or involved in the outcome of the reading, especially if it's for myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I fucked up okay, I can give a clear example. So there was a time where I got really heavy into reading the runes for myself every day.
Mm-hmm.
And not just like a rune draw. I would draw for every little thing. And become so reliant that they basically started running my life. That was a huge fucking mistake. Not only did they get the runes taken from me, from my elder at the time, but also I wasn't living much. This is a really good point from Snow. I think this is also a factor in knowing when to divine for people and when to start charging and or accepting donations and or reading for strangers. Yes, you need to do the self-work.
Yeah. And it's not a linear path either.
No.
Like it's a, hey, sometimes you take a step back because you're just not in the space to do it. Knowing when to say, I can't do that.
Right.
Is good. I actually have a relevant example for that. So a friend of mine had asked for, to the group, had asked for a reading a while back, and I had agreed to do it, even though I genuinely should not have. I was in the middle of preparing for an initiation, and it completely slipped my mind, and I was absolutely not in a place where I should have been reading, let alone for anyone else. And quite on top of that, I forgot for many days past the time that she asked for the reading. And then I hurriedly, on the night of my initiation, started pulling runes for her. And the runes fucking slapped me and were like, no, the answer is no. So I messaged her that was the reading. And she was like, that doesn't make any fucking sense. What are you talking about? Also, I already got the reading from somebody else. What is going on? It's like, oh, I fucked up. Luckily, there weren't like consequences aside from me feeling foolish, but it was I should not have done that. That was a bad idea. Luckily, there wasn't a ton of consequence, but like, that was dumb.
And I think, no matter where you're at in your practice, you're going to have those head slapping, that was real fucking stupid moments.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how many years you've got in, you're going to make boneheaded mistakes.
Yep.
And I think you made, when you first suggested this topic a while back, and when we started talking about it more recently, you said there can be a facade that comes with being public facing with the parasocial relationships, etc. And I'd like to try to dispel that and remind folks that everyone has bad times and fuck ups. And I think part of that is just talking about them. And the other part is reminding people that there's parasocial relationships there and you don't see all the nitty gritty when I come on the stream or when I do my YouTube videos or when I'm on AGF. You do not see Sarenth struggling to get this fucking thing done. Or like last night even, I had finished all of my writing early and I was kicking myself because I felt like I should be writing more despite having all of my writing goals for the day met.
Yeah.
With the best will in the world, high levels of knowledge and experience, you're still a fallible human, no matter how good a diviner or conduit of the divine, et cetera, et cetera. Yes, 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 all of this.
Yeah. and that's really what I wanted to kind of the takeaway for the episode to be, honestly, is we're still just people and don't Sarenth struggles coming to Stars this winter. It would be a Stars show too. Like we're still just people. Like, are we good at what we do? Absolutely. But that doesn't good at what you do doesn't mean perfect, and we're gonna fuck up just like everybody else.
I think that's actually more incumbent on people who know what the fuck they're doing to be real with that. Because if you have an expertise where you can go out into the world and divine for people, you also need to have the expertise to be able to look at yourself and go, I am in the wrong fucking place for this. And that is like your earlier example, like you're a fantastic diviner, and I have brought many a deep-seated issue to you. And there are still times where you're like, I'm not in the right headspace for this.
Yeah. No, 100%. Heck, I owe you some spirit work right now, and I'm just like, nope, not yet.
Nope.
I'll get to it. I'll get to it as soon as I'm ready, but until we get there, I can't do it.
No, and it's also we're doing other shit on top of other shit, and so to a certain degree, like it is totally understandable that things take time.
Yeah.
And the other thing about fate and spirit that I find very comforting is my timeline is not theirs. I have at most maybe 100 years to live. The average lifespan in America is 73 years old. I have hit middle age.
Yep.
I am on the downward slope at this point. Okay. And knowing that my timeline's not the same as a rock's.
Yep.
Their sense of haste is not mine. When I think about some of the mistakes I've made, it's because I felt like there was a fire lit under my ass that wasn't there, and that was my own ego talking, or it was my own sense of anxiety or frustration talking.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I have been on rituals or have had to pinch hit for rituals where I wasn't part of the ritual team, but they needed somebody they could trust. And they're like, okay, Sarenth, you come in here. I'll fucking write. Why not? And so I kind of had to be on task and be willing to fuck up in order to be present for that ritual.
Yeah.
This is also a really good point Emily brings up. The gods and spirits can hurry fate along at times when it suits their own aims. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the other thing that I really want to emphasize, and I'm trying to mull over how to get the words out, is that it's okay to doubt. It's okay to not know. It's okay to be uncertain and feel lost and like you don't know where you're going, even if you think you should. You know, there's been a lot of big changes in my life recently, and a lot of those I'm not ready to and may never be ready to talk about publicly, but like a lot of those are deeply involved with my spiritual practice, and it's thrown a lot of doubt on things that have happened over the past 2 years, which is a long fucking time. I've done a lot in the past 2 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's hard. It sucks, but it's okay. It would be actually more foolish of me to not be in a place of doubt right now. You know, it's even people who seem like they've got their shit together and know what they're doing, they might have their shit together and know what they're doing and still just be filled with self-doubt and feel the fool on the daily.
Yeah. Their understanding isn't ours, basically. Yeah. Which is true. Maleck mulling like a festive wine. Parasocial is hard because as consumers we expect it, we want when we want it, and sometimes forget there's a whole human being and varied life on the other side. Like I have seen some of these huge ass YouTube personalities catch shit because they were a couple of minutes late with some of their updates, and I'm like, holy fuck, y'all! There's a whole ass person, if not an entire team, on the other end of that.
Right? Like you don't know. Maybe their Wi-Fi went down. Maybe they're out of power. Like chill.
I mean, I'm kind of feeling this right now because we're still playing catch up with the latest AGF episode, and mercifully, people have been patient. But there's still this pressure to perform on this side of it. Like you're doing everything right, but you're still feeling like you're running behind.
Yep.
And so, it's just getting there and being patient with yourself. That's the thing.
Yeah. Well, and it's like us with our. How many times have I apologized to you and to our audience about how much my work schedule has changed, and so it's had to change our time. We're broadcasting at 9:30 tonight instead of at 7:30 because I can't broadcast at 7:30 anymore.
Right.
Like I technically had today off work, so I could have today, but next month I can't.
Right. And I honestly think that for me anyway, I mean, fuck the audience. The later time is better for my family because we can do night prayers and get everybody in bed.
Yeah.
But I think to a certain degree, like because the push on a lot of these platforms is to produce. There's this unwritten rule in how people produce content now, whether they are producing content for YouTube or they're producing content for their blogs or they're producing content for Instagram or whatever. There's always something that is this invisible hand pushing and saying produce more or produce it better or whatever. And I'm just thinking back to the early years of YouTube when people were uploading Flash animation and when people were doing really fucking 240 grain DPI videos of themselves talking at a camera with shit lighting and just talking about whatever geeky topic they had to talk about. And to a certain degree, the professionalization of the platform has also led to its enshittification.
Yeah.
So even in YouTube succeeding wildly beyond its dreams, it's also failed as a platform.
Yeah. In a certain way, yeah.
And Emily makes a really excellent point. There are always going to be kinks to work out with a new thing, new people, new process. People forget or don't realize there's a new element when there's a history already there, which is true.
Yeah.
Rip to the game theory team that is coming together since MatPat left.
Yeah.
Likewise to like a good chunk of professional YouTubers that have been around for 10 fucking years.
Yeah. And similarly, with us here on Three Pots, it's me and my new job. That means our schedule is much wonkier. Actually, we're probably going to have to move the time again because currently I'm working until 9:30 and don't get home until 10:30. So we're probably going to have to move that time again.
Oh no, 11:30 when I'm most active. Excellent.
Yeah. So we say to the midnighter host, Sarenth is like, yes, please. This is great for me. But that's late for a lot of people, and we do live streams, and 11:30 is after a lot of our audience is going to be in bed. Like they've got 9 to 5s in the morning. But also I'm working second shift, and Sarenth works the third shift. There's that's
not a lot for us to be able to try 2:30. Yeah, fuck that.
Yeah. So for Snow is in UK in the UK, and
yeah,
sometimes it's slightly different than ours.
A little bit. Drink in bed, we can do it. Yep.
Emily says, "Drink in bed, we can do it." Yeah. But and then you at AGF have 3 new hosts and people behind the scenes doing the editing and stuff for the first time, and yeah, it's a whole new season. Like,
yep,
changes. That's gonna happen.
New year, new us. It's not just an Instagram trend.
And the other thing is too, like, as much of our practice as genuine, more so you than me, but as much as our practice is genuinely public and front facing, there's still more of it that's not.
There's a ton of it that's not front facing because it's just not for public fucking consumption.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're fine. Whether it's because like genuinely it's not for the public because like mysteries or whatever, or it's just I don't want to. That's not your fucking business. Right. I said no.
Yeah. There's certain spirit relationships that I do not talk about publicly. Either because they're really private or because I'm concerned about judgment. And I just don't need that shit.
Yep.
And to a certain degree, like, would talking about it be helpful for other people? Potentially. But I talk about various topics around this one so much. Oh, that's a good one too. I can't articulate this.
Or I can't articulate this. Yeah.
Actually, that's been one of the things that's been really neat about watching Snow's Hermetic stuff come around with Hermetic Heathenry. Like, seriously, check out Snow's blog, folks. That's one of the fascinating things is that Snow is leading you along the same pathways that got them to where they're at. And I think that's part of the kind of the theme of this episode too, is with the good, the bad, and the ugly, is we're at least going to be real with you enough to the point where we're not going to horseshit you that we go through tough times, but unless you're in our inner circles, to a certain degree, it's voyeurism after a point, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And not shaming voyeurs, but, I'm just not one.
Yep. And if you can't do anything to genuinely support, like, there's only so much that, oh, I'm so sorry, can do. Stranger on the internet saying, oh, I'm so sorry, might feel nice for about 0.5 seconds, but after that, it's, okay, are you helping me?
Right.
No? Okay.
Like, this is why I also limit my content on Twitter and Tumblr and TikTok, especially when it starts all turning to things like the Palestinian conflict, because I've done my donating, and there's not a lot that I can do after that, besides rage at my Congress critter to fucking knock it off.
Yeah. Oh, Soot, I saw that tiny black puffball. Yes, I am currently house sitting, which is why I'm in a different locale and the lighting is different and everything. And there's a cat. Wow, I stumbled over that word. Sitting next to me. Whose name is Soot?
Hi,
Isn't that right?
Soot.
Isn't that right? He's a doof. He's cute though. But yeah, no, you're not wrong. Like you can amplify voices and do what you can all day, but at a certain point, there's a limited amount you can do.
It's not your responsibility to fix everything. And
No.
I think that unfortunately, with the way algorithms work and the way that call out culture, outrage culture, and just the internet advertising culture works, controversy sells.
Yeah.
And I have seen more controversial shit come across my For You page on TikTok and my various social medias lately. And it amps everything up. And it also provides you a really interesting echo chamber because I will go out and talk to people at work and their experience of X, Y, or Z is wholly different because the general, like, I follow a lot of leftist bloggers and a lot of leftist people on the various social medias I follow. So what they're concerned about versus what the average person is concerned about are like almost leagues apart.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't think people realize how not representative of the population the online world is. And that's true whether you're looking at altar setups. This is true whether you're looking at blogs, whether you're looking at influencers on Instagram. This is true whether you're talking to people who are organizing things on TikTok. And Snow makes some really good points. I'm going to highlight these. Mm-hmm. We're not here to be zoo exhibitions, but if people have sincere interest or curiosity, then that's different. And we're able to say things, articulate them, have time, etc. Then awesome. We're in bubbles within bubbles. And it's easy to forget that in our corners of the internet, which is very true because I'm an eco-socialist. Like I say that often enough that anybody who's confused about that shouldn't be at this point.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the internet traffic that I get has a very particular niche. And sometimes when I'm working with people, like I'm in a union facility, right? Mm-hmm. My facility is unionized. So it's really fucking weird for me as a leftist to hear people that I'm in a union with talking about voting for people on the right. And it's this discord, it's dissonant for me. Yeah. So like even when you succeed at unionizing a workplace, that doesn't mean that you've changed hearts and minds. It just means that you've collectivized the bargaining agreements.
Yeah.
People want you to prove, oh, fuck, this is good.
People want you to prove your practice and your experiences, which is not your job. They're yours for a reason. They can have their own, but be they similar or vastly different.
Yes. And I think part of the problem too, and something that you have picked up a lot on in comments you've left on AGF's Discord, but I'm not sure if you've talked about on your blog, is how shit people are at actually researching.
Oh, yeah. Holy shit. Yes.
And I know this seems like it's far afield, but this actually matters in terms of like the ugly of practice, right? Because something I talked about in the Save group that I was part of tonight was when I first learned with Freya, one of the things that she had me lean into was the interpretation of Sather as boiling.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of my practice with Sather involves shaking and rocking and looking like I'm boiling inside. And so is that a proper interpretation of the text? It doesn't matter for me because my practice is my practice, but that's the ugly of it. Like where the rubber meets the road, it doesn't fucking matter to me because it works.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there's a whole rant I'm going to go on at some point on my blog probably about how people, this is kind of an aside, but we're on a tangent.
It's tangential, but it's also useful to our purposes here.
Yeah. People really don't realize how exceedingly niche academic language truly is. Like the idea that words have different meanings in different contexts is pretty widely known, but I don't think people really grasp how much that applies to academia.
Right.
So as a very common example, cool can have several meanings, right? It is cool outside versus this concert was really cool mean completely different things, right?
Right.
Even
there's a question too of like what subcultures you're involved in as to what meaning picks up.
Yeah.
As a result.
And even more so, that applies to academia. Specific words will be used and not explained in an academic setting because it is assumed that everyone who is reading that paper or that book already knows what you're talking about, at least to
Right.
some degree. The other thing is people think that, oh, this professor, when they're doing research, they just read it or what. No,
Right.
literally, when I had a professor teach us in the class how to read academic articles, he was like, no, I have been in this field for over 20 years. When I read an article, I read it 6 times. All the
Right.
way through, I read every single word 6 times in order to make sure that I understand what the fuck is going on. And it is usually only by the 6th read through that I am fully confident that I know what this paper is talking about. Um, and nah, they should have turned up the heating at that concert, Malik. Yeah, thanks, Snow. But really, genuinely, like academic language is sometimes necessarily, sometimes unnecessarily. Looking at you, poli sci.
Yeah, no shit.
But really, like poli sci in particular is actually kind of famous in political science. Is kind of famous as a discipline for being kind of unnecessarily obtuse with their language, and making up words when words for that already exist. But that said, sometimes it is genuinely necessary for something to be that deep and hard to understand. Um, there's the old adage of if you can't explain it to a 6-year-old, you don't really understand it. And like to a degree, that's true. But also,
Mhm.
I understand undergrad level genetics relatively well. I could not explain that to a 6-year-old at that depth. Could I explain a surface level version of it? Sure. But I could not explain genuine genetics to a 6-year-old. Why? Because they don't have the years of background knowledge that is necessary to actually get to what I'm talking about.
Right.
Um, and that's, you know,
I think it's worth pointing out that sometimes we have absolutely specialized language. Fair warning for those of you in the audience, I am pouring myself some Kraken. Don't worry, I'm cutting it though. The thing about the ugly of using words, right? The ugly of using a particular lexicon is that it is exclusive. And if you don't know what in the flying fuck we're talking about, that becomes pretty evident pretty quick.
yeah.
And the problem with that is like, this is why in so many of my blog articles, for instance, I have a definition section at the start. So we have a shared understanding of what in the flying fuck I'm talking about.
Yeah. And that's the thing that drives me nuts about people like just jumping into an academic article or a book or what have you and thinking that they understand, because it's the thing that I missed because I have spent so long in academia is that
Right.
it's not just the words and their definitions, which is absolutely part of it, right? The thing with reading an academic article is half the time you have Google and or a dictionary open next to you so you can look up words constantly.
You have at least 2 or 3 tabs running.
Yeah. On top of that, there are unwritten conventions and things that you need to understand that will not be spelled out in that book, will not be spelled out in that article. Like a thing that, and this is not my area of expertise, but I do know that this is the thing. A thing that a lot of people do not understand about translations is that the footnotes in a translation are often the most important part. The text on the page is one thing, but the footnotes explain so much more about what the choices were made in that translation
Right.
by the translator. And if you
Right.
don't already know that, you might ignore the footnotes and think that you're getting the meat of the thing instead of, oh no, you missed 80% of it because you just read the text instead of reading the footnotes.
Right. And I think, the good, the bad, and the ugly is the theme of this episode. Like, the good is that the education is available. The bad is that the comprehension is often not.
Yeah.
The ugly is that misinterpretation happens even for those of us who are trained
Yep.
to read this shit. Because I can read a footnote and go, oh my fucking God, my eyes are glassing over. This has been 3 fucking pages of footnotes. Can we please get to the point? And, your professor had it right. You should read a paper about 6 times. The problem being is scientific reporting doesn't do this shit. What they do is they take the juiciest parts of the conclusion often.
Yeah, they'll read the abstract, they'll read the conclusion, they'll spit out something, and it's like, okay, but you missed all the qualifying bits in between that really matter.
Right. So this is also another point that Snow brings to the fore that I think is really important. I largely ignore footnotes because the stuff I read these days in the footnotes, it's largely not additional or explanatory information. It's just references, and I can get that at the end. I also experience that depending on if it's Lakuto, for instance, in one of his books. Lakuto is good for this shit, where he will have like 2 to 3 pages of notes on the ass end of the margin of the footnote, where he will just like put a bunch of fucking text, and I'm like, that's great, dog, but we're going to keep moving. Because I don't give a flying fuck where you get your information from at the end of the day. I need to know where it is at the end of the book, because when I'm reading it, I need to not be interrupted.
Yeah. Well,
but that's different, right? It's different from poli-sci versus anthropology versus a translation of a text that was originally written in German that has been translated into Norwegian that has been translated to English.
Right, and that's a lot of these unwritten rules that depend on the niche and the subspecialty that you're working in, right? Right, like a translator's notes are going to be very different and have a different quality and importance value than a historian's footnotes. Lakuto, as primarily a historian and folklorist, and I think he primarily is writing in a historical style rather than a folkloric style.
He is.
Those footnotes aren't going to matter. Those are references. That's Chicago writing style. That's what that is. It's just for references. Neat. Cool.
And understanding the difference between the importance of how your footnotes are written is also trained. That's the ugly of being interfacing with a lot of these things, right? So in order to properly interface with the information in front of me, and this kind of styling goes for anybody that produces content, right? Everybody's going to style their content different. I don't like APA style. I grew up with APA style because I'm a psychology major, and fuck that. So that being said, at the very least, you can get nesting with some of these, which is where the Chicago style comes in, because they're really good for that. But the APA style is literally just, here's where I got the information from. Go look it up in the works cited.
Yep. Yeah. And, and it's funny because coming from an English background is where I learned to write academically. MLA style, where it's like, no, we just put a number and then you go look it up at the end of the thing.
Right.
What's important is the text on the page.
Which is so much better for flow.
Yeah, it is. And that's what it's designed for, right? It's designed for you are reading.
MLA fucking weird, right?
In the English writers thing, right? But then like you flip to Chicago, where it's all about the footnotes, and which aren't even a thing in either APA or MLA. Not like you can technically do them, but you shouldn't. They're not for that.
They're not encouraged.
But in a historical thing, right? Footnotes are important. That might have commentary that's important. Writing style matters, and not just in like voice and diction and all of that, but also in how you're formatting things. That makes a difference. And if you don't know that, you might get a very different message, and quite possibly an incorrect message out of the text.
Right. So this is where it's the importance of being honest isn't enough on its own, right?
Right.
Because what you emphasize is what is heard. If what I'm emphasizing is that you're hearing the you're not hearing the emph, right? Yep. So if what I am putting forward to you is just the and I'm not putting the rest of that word together in a whole sentence, that oversells the and leaves the emphasis alone.
Yep.
if that makes any sense. Yes.
Yeah.
You know what's really fucking funny is that y'all are commenting on that. I haven't even drank this motherfucker yet.
Well, no, that's because you shot that Four Roses like it was water.
It was
And the
good.
vodka.
It was
And the
so
vodka.
fucking good. The
I
vodka was
know
good.
it is.
But-
Also, Snow says, and this is funny, back when you studied American in academia.
Oh my God, yes.
I actually mostly focused on British lit because most of my professors, well, okay, that's not true. Mostly I focused on crit theory because I'm very pretentious. But as far as the literature itself, I studied was mostly English or Greek because I did a lot of mythology stuff.
Jesus Christ.
Dude, pretentious. What do you want from me?
I got what it says in the tit.
Yeah.
I joke because like my minor was religious studies, and so like a lot of the stuff we used was MLA format or Chicago style because of the people that were writing it, which was a hell of a twist for me because I had to relearn how citations worked because I'm like, because I gave my poor professors all APA style, and they're like, "You're a fucking psych major, aren't you?" I'm like, "What clued you in?"
Yeah.
But like that's also a problem when you're talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly of this, like the overarching theme of this episode. If you're so used to citing your sources in a certain way, they may not understand, hey, wait a minute. Like the way you're citing your sources actually impacts the message of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And how you disseminate that information.
Yeah.
Like when I found like MLA and Chicago style to be a preferred method of my professors, I was like, oh, glory, hallelujah. Because I don't have to sit there and write 20 fucking paragraphs for you to get what I'm trying to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Just look at my works cited page. But this is also true of like writing a blog.
Mm-hmm.
Like as a professional writer, this is also something that I have to constantly keep in mind that the people that I am talking with and talking to may not have all of the background to really grok what I'm talking about in the way that I'm talking about it. So explaining what your words are and how you're explaining things. And that sometimes like I know from my use of the word Galder, I am not talking in the same vein as professional studied scholars. Usually they're talking about Galdralog. They're not talking about intoning the runes.
Yeah.
I know this going in. My audience generally doesn't.
Yeah. And if they just read your blog and then they go read like Neil Price,
they're going to be confused.
They're going to be confused because they're going to see you both using the same word and not realize that they're different things.
Well, with Price, he actually talks about how it's like magical song, and that's it, which is fucking hilarious to me because there's a difference between Galder and Galdralog, which is where a lot of people in heathen spaces fight. And it's like, dog, we're talking about the same shit. When you're talking about Galdralog, you're talking about poetic meter.
Yeah.
And that's different. But the good and the bad and the ugly of this particular conversation takes place at a crossroads between all these different varieties of expertise and us as people who are engaged in a spiritual practice, trying, sometimes in vain, to explain what the fuck we did wrong when we have Dr. Jack over here with 20 years of experience translating the Havamal, and us over here with 20 years of direct experience with these spirits, and 30 years of this shagoff over here who's been in a niche study field for the last 30 years going, my time has come.
And we're all talking past each other.
We're completely talking past each other because nobody is talking in the same domain.
Yeah.
Sometimes the ugly comes out of people not just mistranslating, but misunderstanding where the other party is coming from.
Yeah. No, it's a thing. And to wrench this fully back to a previous point, even if you're sitting down and you read the runes correctly, how you say that to the client, whether or not you communicate what is being said to you clearly.
Oh, yeah.
That's a whole other ballgame. I can read all day. If I can't tell the client that, I've got no business telling the client anything.
There's a challenge there too. Like sometimes you have to get far enough out of your own way that you don't explain shit to the client. I fucked up by over explaining.
Yeah, same.
I have fucked up by saying, look, here's a laundry list of shit this could mean. And this poor bastard's looking at me like, I need one of these, asshole.
Yeah.
Excuse me. But like, I need one option among 20 you've just given me. Could you fucking narrow it down? Like,
yeah, like all you did was give me more questions. You didn't answer any of them because all you did was give me 20 options and I don't know which one is true.
I had this poor client come to me, and it was back when the Wandering Owl was still open. And this poor son of a bitch just wanted a straightforward answer, and I gave him like 5. And they're like, great, but this is the context of the original. Oh, okay. I mean, sometimes, like, because our heads are either so far up academia's ass or our own experience, sometimes we need that regular Joe Schmo to come along and go, right, so what's the practical application of this shit?
Right.
Which is fucking hilarious because, like, some of the best spiritual lessons I've gotten as a diviner have been from people who ask me a straightforward question and aren't trying to amble around. One that stuck with me till the day I die is this poor woman came in when I was reading for Bloomin' Gallery in Flint. I was a tarot reader, and she asked me about like a secondary option for her daughter, and I'm like, the indicator card was the death card, and I'm like, sweetheart, this person you're talking about probably is going to physically die. I don't know how to tell you this. And like, it was a gut punch for me because I had to deliver this. Like, the ugly of the situation was that sometimes the gods just give us situations where we have to deliver the ugly news.
Yeah.
And this person is desperately looking for another option. There is none. And we just have to be the person that says, you need to make final arrangements.
Yeah.
Sometimes being a diviner, sometimes being a spirit worker is confirming what the person already knows in their heart, which sucks.
Yeah. Sometimes you're the lab tech who runs the test and it's like, no, they have cancer.
Oh, that blows.
Right? Like, sometimes you're the diviner who says no.
But you give them the thing that makes everything come together like a diamond.
Sometimes. And sometimes it's not that. Sometimes it's, well, they have cancer. And you might be able to do something about it, but
likelihood not. This is stage 4. Sorry.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're in that position because you can give the assessment more delicately.
Sometimes you're the one in the room who can say it calmly and help walk them through it. And sometimes you have to maintain that face, and then you go home and you cry because you just told someone that they were dying.
Right.
Okay. As the lab tech, I don't tell anyone that they're dying. That's not my job.
But what you do is you hand the information off and go, yep, they're fucking dying.
Yep.
Good luck.
Oh shit, their white count's over 100 and they have no history of that. They have leukemia.
Yep. And I mean, the thing about that is when you hit the ugly, the only thing that you really is in your capacity to do is the good.
Yeah.
Because you've already got the bad in your hands. Sorry, I am.
No, you're good. So, prime example. You didn't need to get as drunk as you are right now.
No, but you know what?
You're here, and it's like, I'm not ragging on you. It's
no.
But you didn't mean to.
Not when I started.
And now we're here, and we're just dealing with it.
Right. But I mean, the thing about being this drunk is, to a certain degree, it provides me a freedom that, for whatever you feel about the overculture, I sometimes am more honest, or at least not necessarily more honest. I am less curated, perhaps is the better term.
Yeah.
Social media encourages you to curate yourself. Alcohol doesn't care much about that. What's really funny is that everybody's been panicking about me drinking this Kraken, and I haven't even touched it yet. All I'm doing is letting the alcohol hit my system.
Yeah.
I think part of the reason that I love this show and episodes like it is it reminds me of when philosophers would debate a topic and they do it drunk and then they do it sober, or vice versa.
It's an old Jewish maxim, I believe, of debate things twice. Once or thrice, I believe, actually. Once sober, once drunk, and then once again sober. Like in the morning, debate it, and debate it again at night while you're drinking, and then the next morning when you're sober again, see what the fuck you thought last night and whether or not it still holds up.
Right. And so I appreciate that there's formats like this where even if there's only two people in the audience, even if there's only two people besides yourselves that are listening to this, they are still getting intellectual exchange from this.
Oh, yeah. Emily and Snow are just having an entire conversation in the comments that we're not even.
And I appreciate that because I'm not involved at all. Yeah. I'm seeing the scrolling of the StreamYard going, there are people commenting. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Like, I appreciate that. Because not only am I not in control, but I am also not controlling.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
And you don't need to be. And that's the thing that I think we get really hung up on because of there's a certain amount of for lack of a better term, guilt culture, at least in the United States, where
absolutely.
If something goes wrong, it must be someone's fault. And very often it is, but it isn't always. And normal people fuck
Calvin,
up.
You fucking prick.
Yeah. No, you're not wrong.
I know.
But the thing is, like, even if something is my fault in particular, like most of the time people don't walk in intending to fuck up, right? You're not doing something wrong on purpose 99% of the time.
No, but not only you're not like trying to fuck up on purpose, but like the fuck ups you experience and share. The thing that I don't think people understand when it comes to fucking up royally in public versus fucking up in private is that private, it's much more easy to cover your tracks like a cat putting shit over, like putting a litter over its shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're in public, everybody knows you've taken a shit. And even if that public only consists of two other people besides yourself, like, and this is a good point. I actually kind of want to highlight this. And sometimes the fuck up reverberates in a way that avoids the worst fuck up by you or somebody else. When I said enough was enough and finally cut Galena out of my life and Stanian too, a bunch of their students left them all at once.
Yep. And to pull on that thread just a little bit more.
Sure.
How much did you see, and are you still seeing, that is, actually that was deeper than I thought it was?
Well, I mean, that's the thing about hindsight being 2020, because sometimes you don't, when you are in the midst of the good, you don't want to see the bad and the ugly, right? When I finally found my mentor and I finally said, oh my God, this is the person who can, excuse me for a moment, embrace a path. I didn't say, hey, all of these red flags are stacking up, because I finally found a mentor who I clicked with, who I understood on a very intimate level in regards to what the expectations were and how, because she literally outlined them in a document.
Yep.
I hadn't had that before, so I thought I was in the good.
And it turned out later, oh, this is the bad, and you didn't know how to look for it.
Right. Right. If you've been mired in shit with horrible fucking elders, somebody like it was a quote from BoJack Horseman, right? When you're wearing rose-colored glasses, all the red flags just look like flags.
Yeah.
And I think that is also the danger of these gurus on TikTok, on Instagram, and otherwise. And it's also the thing that people really need to watch out for with regards to the people that they suddenly glomp onto. This person may not have the capacity for you, or if they do, it may not be a wise move for you to just wholesale adopt everything they've got going on.
Yeah.
To a certain degree, where she hit me where I was, I really desperately needed it.
And she may have been better than where you were, but
she
that
was
doesn't
certainly better than where I was. But that doesn't. I mean, when the bar is in hell, the only way is up.
Yeah.
And I mean, the thing was, I was in my 20s, and I hadn't fully developed where politically I was yet. But the more that I politically developed where I was, I understood where I wasn't. And to be fair to her, at the time, she didn't shove back against politics the way she does now. And part of that is just feeling threatened because she understands that her way is on the way out.
Yeah.
She has to intimately at this point. But above and beyond that, the ugly of a lot of my practice has come from places where I vulnerably trusted people and I was hurt. And I'm still willing to trust and be hurt again because my barometer for bullshit to ice cream is finely tuned just enough at this age where I understand if you're trying to just blow smoke up my ass or if you're actually trying to genuinely connect with me. And as somebody that has been on social media for the last, 20 some odd years when Facebook came out, I avoided that shit like the plague for a couple of years because I was like, I don't need beyond that. And then I found out everybody was on there. And a lot of the pagan community was on there. And I went, all right, fine, I will temporarily sign up. We'll see how this goes. And what I've been able to see for the good has been, especially when Witchvox died, has been community efforts to define communal spaces and define places where we can be ourselves.
Yeah.
The bad? No, go ahead.
So Emily says, to be fair, people can change. Sometimes it's for the better, sometimes it's not. Don't most of us hope we can and are changing for the better?
Yeah.
And Snow said, because you found and learned about that strength and vulnerability and that it would hurt you in the long run to never risk trusting again.
I mean, sure. And I attribute this more to my age than to my experience because I've been through enough experiences that I've seen that trusting people occasionally pays off. And I think for young people, part of the backlash against political figures and against the politics in general is like, well, we trusted the system and it didn't fucking work. Well, dog, how long have you been fucking electing people?
Yeah.
I am not expecting a great change out of my electoral system. I'm expecting baby steps compared to what I would like to happen. My ideal is very far afield from where I would like things to be. But I understand what reality is. And the system has only so much capacity.
Yeah.
And to a certain degree, the only way that you can build strength is by being vulnerable. And this goes true for when you're lifting weights versus when you're trusting people. Because you came up to me at a time when I was more willing to trust people. And you saw me through a time where I was less willing to trust people. And I mean you in terms of you, Malik.
Yeah.
But I think that part of the collective experience of pagans has been a general rise and then decline. And the good of it is that we trust people to a point and then we don't. And we get to a point where this person has broken trust, but we're willing to extend enough goodwill that we can see them heal. And to a certain degree, um, the only reason that I have relationships with certain people is because they were willing to extend that vulnerability to me.
Yeah.
And I think that that is such a beautiful gift that is often lost in our communities. That vulnerability is discounted because we enter into these sometimes very parasocial relationships, and people just seemingly go off the deep end when they were giving you hints as to how they felt the whole time. And I have been a person who has assumed that this person was in my camp before, and they've shown themselves to be very opposite to that, and it hurt. But I think part of the good is that we continuously show each other our best side, and that when we encounter the bad, we don't let it mar things and become the ugly, that it becomes almost a way of us appreciating the good that much more, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think I get what you're saying.
I could have let myself be completely jaded to the paying community as a whole. And I think what I have taken away from things is that, you know what, we're fucking complicated, right?
Turns out.
And I mean, like, even in our relationship, when you began working with the pack spirits, I had a very idealized form of what that would look like. And then you brought me in and were like, hey, motherfucker, you've got a Patreon. Start making prayers for these spirits. And they showed me areas that either hadn't been shown to you or had not been emphasized.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very interesting as an outsider looking in what was emphasized versus what was being really promoted within your particular milieu at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes the good and the ugly and the bad all kind of intermingle in this soup that eventually, like, you know, when we first put this ingredient in, we weren't sure what was going to fit. But now that we've let the garlic sit for a bit or the leeks sit for a bit, we understand how they're interacting with the meat and the veg, right?
Yeah. Well, and when I first started with this stuff, you were afraid for me.
I was.
Like, and rightfully so. The shit that I was doing was highly experimental. It was
deeply.
It was genuinely, that could have gone very wrong.
Part of the reason I was so concerned for you was because I'd seen so many chaos get, and I mean this with all due respect to chaos, get lost up their own ass. And I'm like, unless there's some kind of fucking end goal, and you're like, I don't know where the end goal is, but I trust the spirits to find it. And I'm like, all right, well, I trust you.
But it was scary.
It was touch and go there for a minute because I wasn't sure how things were going to. I was keeping a tangential eye on things, but like it wasn't mine. So I wasn't cramming myself up your ass going like, hey, updates, motherfucker. But like I was still like, where are things at?
Yeah.
Snow says, plenty of people get jaded, feel like they're doing thankless jobs and quit paying them outright, which is understandable on their part, as frustrating as it can be from the inside. Like, and I do get it when people are like, I've given everything I got.
Yeah. Well, and to use, so Snow is one of the admins of the Skith Blastnir server,
right?
And which is honestly kind of a thankless job itself. Which thank you for running that server, honestly.
Seriously, holy shit.
But like
it's not mine.
I served on the welcome committee back when it was called the welcome committee of that server for over a year. And as much as very genuinely the mod crew and the admins do try very hard to make sure that the welcome crew feels thanked, and I tip my hats to them for that, it's still a very rough job to constantly, every single day, be vetting people coming through the door. That is fucking rough.
It really is. It's a hard thing to keep a space open but safe.
Yeah, it is. It's really hard. And I stopped after a while because I just burned out. I couldn't do it. For one thing, part of it is I was just busy with other shit. Didn't have the time to dedicate. But part of it was I don't have the space for this. I got other shit going on. I don't have I don't have the emotional labor to put into this.
I think that is an often misunderstood component to the good, the bad, and the ugly of just being part of the communities, but let alone being online. Is I'm doing this in my off time, you fucks.
Yeah. This is my weekends. This is my breaks. This is,
right.
Yeah.
And if the risk to reward outweighs itself, I'm going to walk because I've got X amount of time.
Yeah.
And I think that we
ask a lot of our public figures without a lot of understanding.
Right.
Without a lot of understanding that they are people too. And that's to the detriment of our communities, of ourselves, and of those public figures. It's tough.
And that's true whether the person has a Patreon or not. Like if you're putting $1 a day or $1 a month towards a person, like you're talking about an hour of work and less than an hour of work in terms of what they get paid, whatever their day job is.
Yeah.
And like y'all are asking them to take on a gargantuan amount of work. So like when we talk about like parasocial relationships, holy fucking shit. It is no wonder some of these people take an inch and then take a mile. And I am not excusing that, by the way.
Yeah. No, and like there is the opposite end where you get people who are absolutely taking advantage of their audience.
Absolutely. And vice versa.
Thing. Like it cuts both ways, and it's really hard.
It really does, because capitalism is a fucking shithole.
Yeah. And another thing that I want to highlight in this is that communities have different roles that need to be filled, right?
Right.
And some of those jobs are much more thankless than others. Like if you're looking at ritual, for example, everyone is looking at the ritual leader and saying, oh, what a good job they did, and not looking at the ground crew and who set up the space and the admins and who brought the offerings and who did right. No one's looking at all these other people. They're just looking at the ritual leader.
A good ritual facilitator will refocus all of that praise to the people who honestly will. Because like a figurehead it's very easy to collect accolades, right?
Yeah, it is. But even if they're a good ritual leader and they point that praise back at the people, it might not work.
No, which as a person who has been in that position sucks, because it's like this motherfucker didn't do the work. I did.
Yeah. He didn't find the space or set the space or clean up or set up, or he got up and said some words. And like, yeah, I'm glad he said the words because I couldn't, but fucking all of this other shit happened and that was me.
Right. And like, I've been on both sides of that, and it sucks because you're trying almost to a certain degree to overemphasize how little you mean without seeming egotistical about it.
Yeah.
Hi, Soot.
Yeah, he really wants to climb in my lap, which is
I know, you poor bastard.
I'm allergic.
like, as somebody who has been in various forms, like, part of the community, like, look, you really don't understand how much you fuckers rely on the ground crew until shit hits the fan.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, where do I get my water from? Oh, where do I relax? Oh, whose arms do I fall into? Like, I've been that poor son of a bitch who had to rely on ritual crew several times because they gave me a task that was almost impossible to do and I pulled it off anyway. But then I had to fall into somebody's arms, and those arms had to be strong.
Yeah.
Part of the ugly of pagan practice is sometimes the person who is doing the front facing work relies so heavily on the person catching them.
Yeah.
As a person who has been involved in a very public facing ritual for the Dionysian dead, the only person that kept me from ripping the literal avatar of Dionysus at that point in pieces was also the person who caught me and brought me back to full awareness and health, was a very unremarked and very unappreciated role.
Yeah.
And I could not have come back to wholeness without them. And part of the ugly of being in that situation is realizing just how close to that edge you've come. And this person is the only barrier.
Yeah.
Almost acting as like a guardrail for your car.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's one of those things where some people don't realize sometimes how much things not going wrong is due to just the Herculean efforts of a small number of people.
Yeah.
Like, the reason that Skitsblathnir is a pretty solid server that doesn't generally have a lot of problems, is relatively free of drama, is pretty much free of Nazis, etc. I say pretty much because there's occasionally one who slips through, but they're, even when they do, they're,
well, the banning hammer comes down pretty goddamn quick.
Yep,
they're almost because of the community.
Well, and it's because of a very small number of people who are putting in a Herculean amount of effort to make sure that things run right.
Right. And I wish that the broader pagan community had an appreciation for all the little people that do work.
Yeah.
Within the Troth, there's a position, and I can't remember offhand because ADHD is a motherfucker. For people who specifically do work that goes unnoticed. Because of that.
Yeah.
Because there was a woman who like dedicated 30 fucking years of her life to making sure that the nuts and bolts kept going in between all the people who were doing all the leadership shit, which is necessary, but like the mail getting delivered is still a necessary part, right?
Yep.
And so I think we underappreciate the people, the good, the bad, and the ugly of people in our midst. Is until shit breaks down, sometimes we do not have a full appreciation of the people who make things work the way they do.
Yeah. And then very often they don't get the, oh, you did such a good job for so long. They get the, oh, you fucked up. Go fix it.
Right. And it's not the figurehead who goes fixes it more often than not. Although, to be fair, in some circumstances, the figurehead is the person doing all the back end work. Oh, I'm so happy somebody remembered this. This goes back to a post that I made years ago about admins being unappreciated because of the behind the scenes stuff, not the fancy stuff up front.
Yep.
Like, and I have seen so many nonprofits fold in on themselves because the back end work wasn't taken care of or wasn't done well enough.
Yeah. Before I forget for the 6th time, the next thing that I'm drinking tonight, which, oh good, my camera kind of focused.
Bloody cherries.
Bloody cherries. So this is a homebrew that I made many years ago. And it was for, I've had that bottle for so long because it wasn't good when I first made it. It was sickeningly sweet. But over the years, it is now actually quite delicious. And before it was cherry, but mostly just like punchy in the mouth, way too sweet, sickly sweet cherries. Now it actually tastes like you're eating a ripe cherry. Like
Nice.
you can actually taste a lot of the like subtle flavors of like the cherry flesh that aren't normally in a liquid component.
So the tartness and the tannins and the whole of it.
Yeah, like the tartness was always there because that comes forward very quickly.
Sure.
But the tannins and the other like subtle, almost earthy flavors that are in a cherry,
Right.
those are all there now, which is wild because I never expected that. I literally opened that bottle on a lark.
It's like you know what you're doing.
Here's the thing: I didn't that much when I brewed this.
But like,
Yeah.
what I'm trying to emphasize is that sometimes your instincts
Mhm.
take the place of your more academic or training leanings.
Sometimes, and
Sometimes, and sometimes they don't.
yeah, and sometimes shit just works out even when we fuck up.
It's kind of almost the opposite of the Picard quote that I made in the beginning of the episode.
Yeah, right. Like, no,
despite fucking everything up, somehow it looks amazing.
Yeah, like Jason said much earlier in the episode, task failed successfully. Yeah. Oh no.
Speaking of Jason,
a spirits book. No, I'm not adding homebrew stuff into the spirits book.
That's
fair. Yes, I am. I'm lying. I already know I'm lying. It'll be a very small chapter.
I mean, the thing that you could probably most impart to people is how to properly brew.
Yeah. At least the basic shit. Although that is in a lot of books, but adding the spiritual
right.
To it.
But like that's what I was going to get at. Like, because the ugly of that. I'm sorry. I keep reading the episode summary and I keep coming back to the theme.
Yeah.
Like the ugly of like properly preparing a brew, right, is that not only you have to have all your shit in place, but you kind of have to trust the yeast to do what it's going to do, right?
Yep.
And you have to set up the ideal conditions, but after that point, you kind of have to be like, okay, I'm not going to put Candid tablets in yet because you're not ready yet. You kind of have to let the yeast tell you when it's ready, right?
Yep. And sometimes that's long after you thought it should.
Right?
You know? I threw this stuff in the bottle because we were moving. We were moving from South Carolina to Michigan, and we were not about to move active fermenters.
Sweetheart.
The thing that we were doing is we were letting things age in the fermenter because I'm a particular fan of Surly aging.
Hold on, what's Surly aging?
Oh yeah, people don't know what that means.
It means
aging on the lees. It's a French technique used primarily in Chardonnays, where lees are dead yeast from fermentation.
Right, but they still have that memory in them, if you will.
It is very complicated biomechanics of what happens.
Dog, I know. I'm not the audience for this shit.
I know, which is why I'm like, I don't want to explain why it's good to do that and why it's sometimes bad to do that. And you have to do it very carefully. Again,
long story short is you trusted the yeast to do the thing it needed to do.
Well, I was trying to. But we were moving, and I wasn't about to move active fermenters because that's a terrible idea. So we bottled everything that we had brewing very quickly in one night.
Goodness.
We had about 3 different. Hold on, no, 1, 2, 3, 4 different brews going that all got bottled in one night. It was kind of
my fucking. So what you're telling me is you bottled 4 brews in South Carolina and trusted they'd make the journey.
Yeah, so we bottled everything, packed it all up that night, and then moved it to Michigan within the week because our stuff moved at a different time than we did. But Jesus. Yeah, but it wasn't good to start. It was.
What do you mean?
It was fine. It was overly sweet.
But Maleck, you know what you're doing. Why wasn't it perfect?
Because I fucked up.
Right. But how did it work out?
It worked out in the end, Now that
But now you're drinking it.
Yeah, now that we're 5 years down the line. But that's the other thing too, is you don't know when it's gonna go right. Sometimes.
Holy shit. So you mean like that's the central meaning of the episode is even if you fuck up, sometimes you can brew something beautiful out of it.
Yeah, and sometimes it doesn't go well at all. Like that's the thing. Okay, so this is actually kind of a perfect example. So that same bottling also produced another bottle that I used tonight, but it's completely undrinkable still.
Why?
I poured that shit into the crock pot tonight, and I only cook with it. That batch I only use to cook with because that batch, despite being a very similar recipe, had an off flavor to it, which I forget the compound's name, but it tastes like the savory component in tomatoes. There's a particular tomatoey flavor to it.
It's a flavonoid that evolved specifically because you brewed it this way.
Yeah. And both of these are cases of stressed yeast doing not great things, right? In one case, they didn't finish fermenting all the way, so it was still a little too sweet. In the other case, it finished fermenting, but that doesn't taste like meat is supposed to. And one, 5 years later is actually quite drinkable and really quite tasty and interesting. And the other one is, well, this is good cooking wine, I guess.
So the ugly is that it didn't ferment the way you thought it would or should have. But that good came from it.
Yeah. It was, things went bad and I did the best I could with them. The ugly is I did the best I could with the things. And I moved them through 4 or 5 different homes. But, I did what I could. And in the end, something good did come from both of them. It's not what I expected, but
be that as it may,
we did the best we can.
I think this is an example for anybody that decides to take up brewing or any of these magical or spiritual practices, is that you do not know how this shit's going to ferment in your system.
Yeah.
Because you, with all of your experience being a chemist and being a person who has had direct experience in the field with how things should go for brewing, still could not predict how your own brew would turn out.
Exactly.
Under stress.
Yep. That's just how it goes sometimes.
I mean, the good and the bad and the ugly is that the things are always brewing, right?
Yeah.
And that the final brew, if you will, or whatever comes of your tasting and whatever comes of the experiments that you've done over the years, is however they come to fruition, you've still put the work, the effort, and the back of your experience, your understanding, your wisdom collected up to this point in.
Yeah. I think what I get out of this,
sure,
is what I've come to a lot in recent years, is that the change never stops. The change never stops. And that's true all over, right? You as a person, your practice, the meat in the bottle, the meat in the fermenter, the change never stops. All you can do is the best you can with what you've got.
Yeah, good, you've already set up the bottle, right?
Yeah, you set up the bottle. So do what you can with what you've got. And if that means holding on to it for 5 years because you know that it might turn into something good and you've got the space and resources to hold on to a half dozen bottles for 5 years, cool. And if you have to dump them, then you dump them. And
the thing is, if you even get one bottle out of this, would the experiment have worked? Would it have been worth it?
Yeah.
Okay. Then that is what I want people to leave with.
Yeah.
Even if all you get out of your gallons and gallons of brewing is one perfect bottle, that's enough.
Not even perfect. Not even perfect. Good. One good bottle.
Not even perfect.
Because that's the other thing, is perfection's not a thing either. Nothing is perfect.
No. But
if you get one good bottle out of 3 different gallons of brewing, you did just fine.
Yeah.
You did just fine.
Well, I think, because we've been at this for an hour 35,
we should probably kick over to the after party, huh?
We should probably kick over to the after party, because I am feeling this cracking like it owes me money.
Yep.
So,
all right. Thank you all for being here. And I'm sorry, I did not mean to speak over you.
You're good. You got it.
Thank you all for being here. Thank you for the very genuinely entertaining conversation in the comments. And I really hope that, if nothing else, this episode has helped to pull some of the mask of the parasocial relationship off of us and ideally off of life. But it's a hard thing, and we all fall prey to it. And
each of us are brewing.
Yeah.
And only you can tell when you're done brewing.
Yep. All right. Well,
see you in the after party.
See y'all.